Hi everyone, it's Mysti coming to you again with yet another guest speaker. We have today with us Renee Siegel, and she is going to introduce herself and share a little with the group about her journey to therapy, her journey to the Enneagram, and how she's used all of this personally and professionally. Thank you so much for joining us, Renee.
Thank you for having me, Mysti. It's a pleasure.
So Renee, we are talking to a group of licensed mental health clinicians, a variety of different licenses. And so that is why I invited you here today to speak to them and share just a little bit of your journey intertwining psychotherapy and the Enneagram. So if you would like just to start with, I think, those first two questions. What has your journey to psychotherapy been, and what has your journey to the Enneagram been?
Sure. So initially, I graduated with a master's in marriage and family therapy and moved to Arizona. And during my practicum in marriage and family therapy, I was placed in an addictions treatment center where I was designing programs for family members who were supporting the alcoholic in recovery. There wasn't even a conversation about chemical dependency. Alcoholism and drug addicts were even separated at that time. So the term chemical dependency 42 years ago had not been coined. So we were dealing with people who had alcohol problems, and I was designing family programs for them and knew nothing about the Enneagram. That was 42 years ago. I knew nothing about the Enneagram, but knew very much, had a very strong feeling in the beginning of my journey as a clinician that there was a lot more to people making changes and sustaining changes than this idea that you had a mental and emotional component only. So 42 years ago, the body was not part of psychotherapy. In fact, it was just kind of this thing that sat outside and it helped you function, but the body was really never considered as part of something that you might consider in your journey to wellness or good mental health. Fast forward today, we know that the body is not only important, but embodied kind of work has probably been at the forefront of what we do. So when I was introduced to the Enneagram almost 20 years ago, it was like the light came on. It was like, oh my goodness, here is an ancient kind of wisdom tradition that's been passed down, that's kind of, in my opinion, a seriously best kept secret, that's like Myers-Briggs on steroids, that has a body component and really acknowledges that you have a way of knowing information and gathering information in your head and in your heart and in your belly, and synthesizing that information to help somebody understand through their Enneagram type what their particular journey to wholeness, wellness, a better version of themselves, sounder mental health might be. And in addition to that, trained as a marriage and family therapist and identifying as a type 2, the juiciest part of me is that it became really, really a potent tool for relationship healing, for people to really get that my husband isn't doing this to me to hurt me, or I cannot take this personally because this is his character structure or his type structure, using the words personality, character structure, and type structure interchangeably in our Enneagram discussion.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. How, I guess, so you mentioned that you are a type 2, and most of the folks that are watching this are just now learning the Enneagram. It might be helpful to share with them what's something that you learned and applied either personally and professionally or both, just in regard to knowing what being a type 2 meant or means.
Well, one of the ways that in terms of working with other clinicians in the Enneagram that's really important to me is looking at type bias. So I'm going to share with you what I learned about myself in my own personal Enneagram journey and professional Enneagram journey, but also I hope that our listeners will consider that this is a bias that I come into all sessions with, just like every person comes in with a type bias. We, psychotherapists call this transference and countertransference, but when you look at it through the lens of type and type bias, you really kind of can bump up against your frustrations or reactivities when clients aren't performing or responding in the way that you'd really like them to do. And we all have those, and it's all part of just being a human being as well as being a psychotherapist. But I think it really becomes very much illuminated when you look at it through the lens of type. So as a type 2, the type 2 is called the helper or the giver. And one of the things, it's within the heart triad. So the type 2 is always looking to be liked, well received, to have a good image, to have a good impact on someone, to have a sound reputation. So you can begin to see that if I walk into all of my sessions with my focus on how I'm going to be helpful or giving or to another client, that's something that's really very much embraced by the field of psychotherapy. That's an innate gift. It's the ability to walk it. It's not a skill that I needed to develop. It was a skill that I just kind of organically developed as in my type 2, because your type does not change. So it's easy to do that, because my focus of attention is always outside of myself. It's always on the other person. It's just easy to consider what's going on externally. So where that really becomes a difficulty is really coming inside and investigating what's going on internally. Looking at my own internal landscape, what is happening inside of me. And of course, when you look at our own personal growth platforms, the need for individuation and personal agency, those are not innate skills for a type 2. That is a lifetime journey. It's really coming home to oneself on a minute-to-minute, day-to-day basis, hour-to-hour basis, depending on how often and how willing I am to examine what is going on with myself. And the Enneagram gives me a way of really kind of examining, what are my thoughts right now? What is going on in my chest area, or how is my heart open or not open, and what is my own sensate or belly experience, intuitive experience to what's going on around me. Only when I'm able to navigate the territory between what's going on externally and internally am I really not only becoming a better version of myself and growing my own self personally, but really looking at my type bias. So if my intention is to get you well, and that is where all of my energy goes, and you don't get well, I could take that seriously personally. And I think that's something that a lot of therapists do. It's not a trademark of a type 2. We all want our clients to get well. But for a type 2, it becomes like, oh my goodness, I didn't do this well. Until I do my own personal work, or I really acknowledge my type bias, and I'm really able to go back and forth between, wow, that's their journey. This is what's going on with them. This is what I can offer. This is the platform of safety, the safe, beautiful container that a type 2 innately provides. Prior to knowing the Enneagram, clients would say to me all the time, I feel so safe with you. I feel like I could tell you anything. You are the most nurturing person. But those are innate gifts. I didn't even understand that until I understood my type 2. Those are not growth platforms necessarily. Those are the innate gifts that type 2 walks into being a psychotherapist with.
Mm-hmm. That's one of the things that I love about the Enneagram is, speaking of that, is that it helps us as individuals understand, like, for example, I'm a type 8. And so you may have been thinking as a type 2 when people told you those things, well, doesn't everybody do that? Or doesn't every therapist do that? Or doesn't, right. And I love learning about not only our own type, but the other types as well, to recognize, no, those are not the innate gifts of everybody. Those are the innate gifts of a certain population.
Yeah. And I think at some level, it helps us to come into a therapy session even giving permission, maybe even making a statement like, I can, the tendency is to want to help too much. So, a growth platform for me as a therapist is to be able to back away and not help so much and really allow people to come to their own conclusions. And that's also an issue with an 8. So I'm sure that you can understand that at some level. It's something that there are certain types that have things in common. So allowing people to do their work and really, really realizing that their work may not look the same as the path that I might have predicted or forecasted for them to take, that they may have a totally different way of even getting to the same goal. The goals may be set, your client sets their treatment goals, but the path that they take to get there may look so different than what you forecast or predict that it might look like.
Yeah, yeah. So Renee, you, like some of the other therapists that I know who use the Enneagram in clinical practice, are also a certified Enneagram teacher. Would you like to share with the audience what your certification path was?
Sure. Well, I will tell you that the year that I was introduced to the Enneagram, I was so enamored by this. We all have to take CEUs, we all have to do this, that, and the other. The first year that I was introduced to the Enneagram prior to my certification path, which started the following year, I got 90 continuing education credits just in Enneagram work. It was like, how you learn something in a CEU and you go, oh, I think I'll use that, and you file it away, and then you realize 10 years later you never even touched that. I was so hungry, and I know that you had a similar experience. It's like the doors open and it's like, let me in. How much more can I learn and what can I know? And so I started my certification through the narrative process with Helen Palmer and David Daniels. So I was very, very fortunate that they were my teachers. Peter O'Hanrahan and Terry Saraceno were also my teachers, and did the narrative training certification process, which was real lengthy. You had to go through, I think it was 3 weeks of intensive, and then you had to be supervised for a year with a certain amount of hours, and then you had to come back and lead the next intensive. So that's what my certification process looked like. So I did that, and I think every year I would probably be correct in saying that every year since that happened, I have had at least 100 hours or close to 100 continuing education hours of either teaching or being in Enneagram trainings, because I can't get enough. One of the things that the Enneagram has done for me, aside from giving me a path home to myself and doing my own personal work, has been that it's one of those things, just like all really good things, the more you know about it, the more you realize you don't know. And so my appetite is still as wet, maybe wetter than it was when I first was introduced to the Enneagram. And so I'm a certified teacher through the narrative tradition. I hold certifications with the ENT, which is the Enneagram Narrative Teachers. I hold certifications with as a teacher with the AEA, and there's a couple others that are just escaping me right now.
But are you involved with IEA, the International Enneagram Association?
Yes, I'm not certified through the IEA. That's one certification that I'm actually thinking about doing. But I'm a professional member with the International Enneagram Association. And right now we're putting together a body of information, a relationship curriculum, foundational relationship curriculum for the Arizona Enneagram Association. So I'm a team lead on that, which is really, really exciting, because the AEA has been, just an incredibly proactive organization in bringing quality Enneagram information forward and its teachings. And I know you've been a part of that. But yeah. Relationship curriculum, David Daniels' book came out, Intimacy and Relationships, and now we've kind of opened up the doors to, okay, if we were to consider creating a whole curriculum around relationships as they relate to type, what would that look like? And feel really honored to be the team lead on that.
Yeah. I'm a part of the relationship project as well, and it has definitely been eye-opening for me to say, ever since I got introduced to the Enneagram, I'm like you, I just couldn't get enough and thought, how is it possible that I haven't been using this the entire time in my clinical work? But I have a history with Myers-Briggs, so I always had used that. And I love that you said you think the Enneagram is like Myers-Briggs on steroids. That seems so appropriate. So, well, I guess I just have one last sort of question for you. And that is, it's interesting because we are speaking to a group of clinicians who are, quote, considering using the Enneagram in their clinical practice. And you have just written a book called Considering the Enneagram. Do you want to tell them just a bit about that?
Sure. So Considering the Enneagram is an ebook right now. It's an ebook, and it's 35 answered questions that were submitted to me by counselors, coaches, and spiritual directors who already have been using the Enneagram in their practice, but they submitted questions to me that they wish they would have known when they were considering using the Enneagram, because the Enneagram is not for the faint-hearted. It's not for people who want to just find out something and then put it into their practice. It really requires a practice of one's own. It requires a lot of work, but it will provide you the most holistic, in-depth way to help and work with your clients that I've ever discovered in my 42 years of practicing. So Considering the Enneagram is those 35 questions answered in an ebook format. I strongly recommend it. It's $4.99 on Amazon eBooks or Kindle. And it really, for those of you who are thinking about this, it will help you to understand how much time it's going to take to bring this into your practice, what it would look like in helping with clients who are stuck, what it looks like in terms of clinician bias, just a lot of things that one really might consider before you invest in moving forward in bringing the Enneagram, and also how to do that responsibly, because there are a lot of people who use the Enneagram very topically, like it's just a little game that you would play on a Saturday night with your friends, and that is not what the Enneagram is.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm actually going to be making a video for this group on the use and misuse of the tool, because there's so many memes out there right now and people who really play with the Enneagram. And I think that's fine. I think that there's room for that. But I think that it can also misguide people as to how you would truly use it in a clinical practice. So
sure. Yeah.
I'm glad that you...
Yeah, having fun with it on a Saturday night, I'm all for it. Any way that somebody can be introduced to it, but bringing it into a clinical practice in a topical or superficial way would be bastardizing the use of the Enneagram.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Renee, our time is just about up, and I so appreciate you joining us. I will put links to your website, and that will have a link to the ability for folks to purchase the book. Anything else you want to share with the group before we end?
No, I just want you to know that the Enneagram is a game changer. And, oh yeah, I do have one last thing, and that for clinicians particularly, because I'm a NADAC provider, if you would like to go on my website, which is urpurepotential.com, the letter U, letter R, purepotential.com, you can actually take my Game Changers course, which is an hour long, and you get a free continuing education credit if you will fill out the evaluation and quiz.
Wonderful. That is great to know. Well, thank you so much for your time, Renee. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Mysti, for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Thank you.